so near that he had almost taken her in his arms. Now, in an instant, she had placed something so vast between them that he would not have dared to touch her hand or her hair. Like sun and cloud and wind, she changed, and for him each change added to the wonder of her. And now it was storm. He saw it in her eyes, her hands, her body. He felt the electrical nearness of it in those low-spoken, trembling words, "You shall not!" The room seemed surcharged for a moment with impending shock. And then his physical eyes took in again the slimness of her, seized upon the alluring smallness of her and the fact that he could have tossed her to the ceiling without great effort. And yet he saw her as one sees a goddess. "No, I won't ask you questions when you look at me like that," he said, finding his tongue. "I won't ask you what this price is that Kedsty may demand, because you're not going to pay it. If you won't go with me, I won't go. I'd rather stay here and be hung. I'm not asking you questions, so please don't shoot, but if you told me the truth, and you belong in the North, you're going back with me, or I'm not going. I'll not budge an inch." She drew a deep breath, as if something had greatly relieved her. Again her violet eyes came out from the shadow into sunlight, and her trembling mouth suddenly broke into a smile. It was not apologetic. There was about it a quick and spontaneous gladness which she made no effort at all to conceal. "That is nice of you," she said. "I'm glad to hear you say it. I never knew how pleasant it was to have someone who was willing to be hung for me. But you will go. And I will not go. There isn't time to explain all about it just now, for Inspector Kedsty will be here very soon, and I must dry my hair and show you your hiding place, if you have to hide." She began to brush her hair again. In the mirror Kent caught a glimpse of the smile still trembling on her lips. "I'm not questioning you," he guarded himself again. "But if you could only understand how anxious I am to know where Kedsty is, how Fingers found you, why you made us believe you were leaving the Landing and then returned, and how badly I want to know something about you. I almost believe you'd talk a little while you were drying your hair." "It was Mooie, the old Indian," she said. "It was he who found out in some way that I was here, and then M'sieu Fingers came himself one night when the Inspector was away, got in through a window, and simply said that you had sent him, when I was just about to shoot him. You see, I knew you weren't going to die. Kedsty had told me that. I was going to help you in another way, if M'sieu Fingers hadn't come. Inspector Kedsty was over there tonight, at his cabin, when the thing happened down there. It was a part of Fingers' scheme, to keep him out of the way." Suddenly she grew rigid. The brush remained poised in her hair. Kent, too, heard the sound that she had heard. It was a loud tapping at one of the curtained windows, the tapping of some metallic object. And that window was 15 feet above the ground. With a little cry the girl threw down her brush, ran to the window, and raised and lowered the curtain once. Then she turned to Kent, swiftly dividing her hair into thick strands and weaving them into a braid. "It is Mooie!" she cried. "Kedsty is coming!" She caught his hand and hurried him toward the head of the bed, where 2 long curtains were strung on a wire. She drew these apart. Behind them were what seemed to Kent an innumerable number of feminine garments. "You must hide in them if you have to," she said, the excited little tremble in her voice again. "I don't think it will come to that, but if it does, you must. Bury yourself way back in them, and keep quiet. If Kedsty finds you are here—" She looked into his eyes, and it seemed to Kent that there was something which was very near to fear in them now. "If he should find you here, it would mean something terrible for me," she went on, her hands creeping to his arms. "I cannot tell you what it is now, but it would be worse than death. Will you promise to stay here, no matter what happens down there, no matter what you may hear? Will you, Mr. Kent?" "Not if you call me Mr. Kent," he said, something thickening in his throat. "Will you, Jeems? Will you, no matter what happens, if I promise, when I come back, to kiss you?" Her hands slipped almost caressingly from his arms, and then she had turned swiftly and was gone through the partly open door, closing it after her, before he could give his promise. End of chapter 14. Recording by Roger Moline.